I want to welcome you all to day 2 of College Week. I'm super excited to have you back today if you joined us yesterday. And today we're going to be speaking about the various types of college essays, including why they're important as part of your child's narrative and some helpful advice on how to approach them, because I think that can be overwhelming when you get started. Mary Beth Libran was supposed to join us today, but unfortunately she wasn't able to. So I'm going to be tackling this topic on my own, which is actually okay with me because the college essay is truly one of my most favorite parts of the process. So I'm excited to share some insights with you. For those of you who were not with us yesterday, my name is Renee Minnich, and I'm a college consultant at Educational Connections. I worked in college admissions for over 30 years before becoming a college consultant. And I would estimate I've probably read well over 30,000 college essays. So I have a really good handle on how to draft a strong one and what colleges are looking for when they receive and read that college essay. Before we get started, I want to let you know that I will be using both the Q&A box and the chat box for questions today. If you have a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. If you don't have the Q&A feature on your Zoom, you can also put it in the chat and I'll be monitoring both of those. I'm going to speak for probably 25, 30 minutes, and then I'm going to go to the Q&A and answer any questions you have about the college essay. So feel free to drop those in as we move along. Okay, let's get started with why essays matter. Why do colleges use them? What should you be putting in them? And what really is the significance of them? So, essays are really an open opportunity for students to share who they are, what they care about, what they hope to accomplish, and what they'll add to the student body at that college campus. Depending on the essay, students may be given a certain topic or a question to answer, and other times they have the freedom to select any topic that they want. So this is a really unique opportunity for students to make sure the admissions committee really knows who they are outside of their academic metrics. Essays are also an amazing way for your student to make themselves stand out. As we all know, the application numbers at colleges is skyrocketing right now. And with so many applications looking similar academically, a strong, well-written essay is a great way for students to differentiate themselves. On the flip side, if your student does not have a strong test score, or maybe their grades are a little bit lower than they had hoped, this is also a great way for them to shine and really enhance their application. And finally, with more and more colleges adding supplemental essays, and if you don't know what those are, that's okay. I'm going to talk about them later. This is when they ask students to write an essay just for that particular college. It's a great way to show demonstrated interest for that school. If a student is willing to write an extra essay for a school, it's really showing the college that you have a high level of interest in them. And that's really important to colleges right now. So let's talk about the application landscape and what the different types of essays there are. There's some that are very commonly known and some that may be a little less known. So many students know the Common App has an essay or a personal statement, but there are other essays or short answers that may be required in the Common App depending on the makeup of the student's list. Let's go over these. So the Common App has primarily two types of essays. One is the Common App essay or the personal statement. This is sent to every school that you apply to using the Common App. There's 7 prompts. You choose one of them, and you can write up to 650 words. The second type within the Common App are the supplemental essays, and this is what I mentioned earlier. Colleges have the option of adding in a supplemental essay that a student must complete just for that college. It can be a very brief, short answer, 50 words, all the way up to another essay of 650 words. Sometimes there's one, sometimes colleges have 3 or 4. So every college has the ability to set up their supplemental essay structure differently. And there are also many colleges that have elected not to have a supplemental essay. So not every college has that. I'm also going to talk a little bit today about the UC application, the one from the University of California schools, because that's an entirely separate application than the Common application. As part of the UC application, a student must answer 4 of 8 prompts called PIQs, personal insight questions. So they select 4 of those, and their responses must be 350 words or less. So there are really quite a few different types of essays that a student may have to navigate throughout the process, depending on what colleges they have on their list. Let's start with the Common App personal statement. This is the time of year that students are starting work on the Common App essay or personal statement. So I really want to start with that. I know as a college counselor right now, every student I'm meeting with that is a rising senior, we are starting to talk about their Common App essay because this is the perfect time to start drafting that. And you want to give yourself some leeway, some lead time in getting this done so you don't feel like it's something that you're rushing to do at the end. The prompts have already been announced for the next admission cycle. So for students who are applying for fall of 2027, the prompts for the Common App application are already announced. They typically do that in February. So if you have a student who is younger than a rising senior, know that those Common App prompts normally come out late February. I will tell you though, to be honest, when I'm working with students and we're drafting the Common App personal statement, I tell them not to look at the prompts. I think when you look at the prompts, it becomes an essay where here's a question and I need to answer it. I actually encourage students to approach it backwards. Think about what they want to write about before they look at any prompts. I want to kind of talk through the differences between an essay and a personal statement too, because I did actually change the slide so it said Common App personal statement. And I know most students will call it the Common App essay. In high school, students have written a tremendous amount of essays. And to me, essays are really where someone has taught you something, you have learned and absorbed it, and then you're repeating it back to the teacher to let them know that you have, absorbed and know that content. A personal statement is something very different than that. A personal statement is really a self-reflective piece where you're thinking about an experience you had or something that's important to you and really thinking about why it's important and what impact it's had on you and putting that on paper. And I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons why students struggle starting the Common App personal statement because they've never really written something like that before. And so it is important to kind of have a little bit of thought process ahead of time and think about how to go into it to really make sure that you're drafting a strong one. But I will use the term Common App essay and Common App personal statement kind of interchangeably throughout the presentation. So as admission readers are, getting the applications and getting the essays, what are they actually looking for in those essays? As I mentioned, I've probably read 30,000 plus. I think that's probably a low number of college essays in my time at admissions. And I have really strong feelings about what makes a good personal statement from an admissions perspective. And when that essay is received, there's certain things that colleges are looking for. Number one, it needs to be well written. I can't tell you how many times I read an essay, and I always read the essay first because I wanted to learn about who the student was before I looked at their grades or their test scores. So the essay for me was the first read. So I would read the essay and then I would make a note on the review about their essay. And you don't want to have the beginning of your review poorly written essay because that's like the first impression you may have. You really want to make sure that it's well written. And after they read it, they say, oh, this student knows how to write well. The second and most important thing is that it has to be in the student's own individual voice. It has to be authentic. It has to be something that is individual to that student and definitely is written in their own voice. Colleges are also looking for reflection on the topic you chose. What did you learn from this experience? How did you grow? How did it change your perspective? Why is it important to you? All of those things should be pieces of that puzzle when you're drafting that essay. And then at the end, I always have students, do a connection to the future. Based on this, this is what I learned, and this is how I'm going to use that knowledge going forward when I go to college, when I have a career. I think that's a really nice way to summarize what they're sharing. And then the last one I put in was specificity. And by this, I mean show, don't tell. Instead of saying, I completed community service, say, I volunteered over 100 hours with 2 different agencies over 3 years. They really want to know those specifics. And that's what's going to make one student's application stand out over another, is having those specific details in there. And when you're sharing these things, you're also showing commitment. And that you're sticking with something for a long time, or why it was significant to you. So let's talk about how to get started. I think this is probably the most difficult part. I usually recommend that students have a session where they're just brainstorming first. No pressure. Like, I usually have a meeting with them that this is all we do. We don't even talk about writing. Let's just talk about ideas of what we might want to write about. Jotting down topics that they like, that they're interested in. Sometimes I ask, if you could share one thing about yourself with me, what would it be? Or if you have an object that's most important to you, what is that object? Tell me one of your favorite experiences you've had in your life, and why is it important? Those are the type of questions. I actually have a whole long list of questions I go through with them that I think you really want to start generating those ideas. Once we have 3 to 5 topics down, I sort of get a sense of what direction they want to go with it. And sometimes a student will bring up a really unusual topic with me. I just met with a student over the weekend, and he said, I really want to write my essay on energy drinks. And I was like, I have never read an energy drink essay before. So let's talk about that. And he ended up sharing with me, why he drinks energy drinks, how he drinks them differently than everyone else, sipping them throughout the day, and how this provides him energy, and how he also tackles other projects this way, a little bit at a time. And it was super interesting. So sometimes these topics that students think, oh, I can't write about that, they actually can if they tie it in a meaningful way. So once we get down to 3 to 5 topics, we look them over, and I kind of see what direction they're going with. Oftentimes, I will tell you, students are selecting topics that I have seen over and over and over again. Admissions officers are human beings. When we have read the same topic over and over again, and we get to the first paragraph and we see it's an overused topic, automatically it is, okay, here's another one of these essays about this topic. And you don't want that. You want them to read the first paragraph and say, oh, well, this is interesting. Tell me more. Let me learn more. So there's certain topics, as I mentioned, I've seen many times. Scouting, service and mission trips, COVID, many essays on COVID, recovery from sports injuries, music, certain topics like that, where just so many students have written about them. So we have conversations about alternate topics, if that is what their list is made up of. And because I really want students to have something that is unique, that makes them stand out from the rest of the essays that'll be read that day or in that admission cycle. I will tell you, though, that there is a way to make even a common topic your own. So I have a quick story for you, and you may have heard this if you've seen other presentations that I've done. But I read students who majored in engineering for many years when I worked at a STEM college. So I'd read many engineering applicants, and I will tell you the most predominant essay topic was Legos for those students. So many students wrote about getting their first Lego and how much they enjoyed it and how it sparked their interest in engineering. So as I was reading, when I was an admissions officer, I was reading engineering applicants, and I opened one up, and here we go. It's a Lego story. And in my head, I thought, here we go, another Lego story. And as I'm reading into the story, the student starts telling me about how he got a Lego when he was younger. He and his mom were on their own. They didn't have a lot of money. She had found an unopened Lego at the Goodwill store and given it to him for Christmas. And it really sparked his interest in engineering. And so, talked all about that. And then at the end of the essay, He said, ever since my mom and I have gotten back on our feet, we have now donated an unopened Lego to Goodwill every year in honor of me having that experience as well. That is an essay on a common topic that stood out and I will remember for the rest of my life. Really, really unique spin on that. So I think there is a way to do that. I think there is a way to take even some of those common topics and make them unusual and stand out a little bit. But those are conversations that I have with students and you would want to have with your child to say, is this an essay that anyone could have written, or is this an essay only you could have written? I also discourage students from writing about someone else, which I think is kind of an easy out for those students. They may have been inspired by someone else, but that really becomes an essay about the other person and not about the actual student who's writing the essay. So I think that's something to think about too. And then reluctant writers. I probably many of you on this call may have a reluctant writer who doesn't want to get started or will drag their feet in getting started. I work with a lot of students that have ADHD. And so I see this quite a bit that, they really struggle to get started. So when I'm working with these students, I try to identify, first of all, why they're dragging their feet. Honestly, typically the bulk of the time is just fear and not knowing how to get started. So really thinking about and having those conversations of let's get this started early so we don't have to do it all at once. Let's break it down into smaller chunks instead of you feeling overwhelmed that you have to do everything at once. Let's just take 15 minutes and brainstorm ideas. After we do that, maybe next week we write just the first paragraph. So, taking the pressure off that it has to be this gigantic, huge life experience that you have to share, and taking the pressure off that it doesn't have to all be done at once. Now, those are probably the two biggest keys that I think help those reluctant writers get started. And typically, once we hit on a topic that they actually are excited about, they will write. They will sit down and write about it. It's when they feel they have an obligation to write about something then that they're not really interested in. That's where I see them sort of dragging their feet a little bit and not wanting to get started. So I have some recommendations on how to get started because this is, it can feel overwhelming. As I mentioned in the last slide, start one paragraph at a time. I think that makes such a difference for students. I just met with a student last night that couldn't decide between three topics. So I said, over the next 10 days before we meet again, write one paragraph for each one, and then we'll talk about it. And then once we write one paragraph, I say, okay, where do you want to go next with this? And if they're like, I don't really have anything else to say, that's not the right topic. Or, hey, here's the next thing I want to share. And here's what I want the admissions committee to know. Doing it one paragraph at a time is so, so helpful. I also tell students just start with a rough draft and edit it later. Don't stress over grammar and punctuation. I mean, have some sentence structure there so I can tell what you're writing, but get the ideas on paper and we can edit it later. Biggest thing I tell students is always get an opinion from an outside reader. Obviously, the students I work with, I will review them, but if a student's not working with a college counselor, someone else should read their college essay, a teacher, a counselor, a parent, if they let you. That getting that outside opinion is very, very helpful. As we all know, we have all written things and read them multiple times and skipped over mistakes. It's just human. It happens. And also really to make sure that you're saying what you want to say. And then, I also really, really stress being authentic. I know we talked about this at the beginning where I said it must be in the student's own voice. Don't try to figure out what you think the admissions committee wants to hear. They want to hear what you want to say. I can guarantee that. And I could always tell in the essays where the student was trying to impress the admissions office or committee instead of really being authentic to who they are. I think we cannot finish this section without talking about AI. AI is everywhere right now, including in college admissions, and students are using it. Admissions offices are using it. So my recommendation to students is to minimize as much as possible the use of AI in their college essays. If you are using AI to write your college essays, it is not your true and authentic voice. The colleges are not learning about you. They're learning about whatever AI drafted for you. And you will also see, and I have already seen this in working with students, certain phrases that AI will use over and over again. And when I'm seeing the same phrase in multiple students' essays, I can tell already that it's not authentic to them. And when I have that question in the essay and I'm reading it, I am telling you an admissions officer will start questioning the authenticity of other parts of your application. So you don't want to put that seed of doubt in there. On the flip side, admissions offices are also using AI in many, many different ways. But in pertaining to essays, many are running students' essays through a comment or an AI screener to see if they are flagged as have been using AI. So I think, I tell every student I'm working with, we talk about it at the beginning. Just be thoughtful of it and, know that this is a possibility because it really is important that a student submit something that is in their true and authentic voice. That is truly what the admissions office wants to see. So the Common App also has two additional sections. They have the main essay, which we just talked about, 650 words. Then they have two additional questions in the writing section of the Common App. One is called Challenges and Circumstances, and one is called Additional Information. Both of these boxes are optional. I would say maybe 40 to 50% of students will use them. So not a significant number, but they are there if a student would like to use them. Let me start with challenges and circumstances. This box is specifically for students who have had challenges or circumstances outside of school that may have impacted their schoolwork or their grades. And this can be a very wide range of things to family situations, homelessness, food insecurity, but can also cover things like learning differences. And so a lot of students that I work with will write about their ADHD here, as opposed to writing about it in their main college or Common App essay. And I like the idea of that. I tell students, if you have two places to share things with the admissions committee, utilize that. So you can write one thing in your Common App essay and then use this challenges and circumstances section to talk about ADHD or learning differences or things that may have impacted your schoolwork. The challenges and circumstances section is shorter, however, it's only 250 words. So you have a smaller amount of words to describe that. But typically, this gives students enough to share what kind of challenges they may have had over the time of their schooling with learning differences or ADHD. Now, the second box is called additional information. Prior to this past year, this was a 650 word box. Last year, the Common App changed it to 300 words. Honestly, I think a lot of students were copying and pasting their resume in there, and that is not what they wanted. So the additional information box right now is 300 words, and it truly is a place for students to share any additional information that they would like the admissions committee to know that would not be reflected in their application. For example, I had a student who did not take a foreign language and wanted to share why he did not take a foreign language in there. I had another student who ran out of classes to take in high school for math because he was very advanced and was taking a number at the community college, wasn't getting an associate's degree there. That's a perfect thing to share here. But it is also completely fine to leave this box blank. You don't want to think up something to put in there, but if you have something that you want to share, this is the perfect spot for it. Okay, supplemental essays. I touched base on this a little bit earlier, and this is the last part of essays within the Common App. Outside of that Common App personal statement, as I mentioned, some colleges will have supplemental essays that they will ask you to write just for their college. Let me give you an idea of what some of them look like. Probably most common would be why us? Why are you interested in attending Clemson? And so you don't want to throw in random facts that you Googled about Clemson. You want to put some specifics in there. When I visited campus, I truly love this dorm or this building, or the tour guide told me this. That's the type of thing that they're looking for. They also ask a lot of questions about activities. What have you been involved in? What did you learn from it? How did it impact you? Lots of questions about community service. I see though quite a few of those. Probably the second most popular one is academic major essays. You know, why do you want to major in computer science? That is very, very common. The good thing about the academic major ones is at times you can draft this for one school and use it as a base if other schools ask the same question. Because the why you're interested in computer science should be consistent across the schools. And some schools have really unique and interesting supplemental essays. I love these and they drive me a little crazy simultaneously. So let me give you an example. Elon. I love Elon, wonderful school, becoming very, very popular. They have a question where they ask students to list your top 5 of anything. You can pick any topic at all and list your top 5. So that leaves it very broad. And you have 150 words to describe why that is your top 5. So it's kind of an interesting take. I had a student last year who wrote about, he was a hiker, he and his dad would hike. And so he wrote about the top 5 hikes he has taken, where they were, and what he experienced and why he likes hiking with his dad. So that's an example. I've had students write about their favorite songs. I mean, it really can be anything, but I think that's an interesting one. The University of Maryland also has like these short answers that you have to answer, and some of them are what you would expect. But one of them is, what was your favorite thing about last Monday? So it's so random, but I've actually seen students write some really interesting things in here. So some colleges will take a very non-traditional approach to these supplemental essays. I think that makes it kind of fun. All right, let me touch base on the University of California applications. As I mentioned earlier, the UC has a totally separate admissions process from the Common Application, and they include PIQs, personal insight questions. So there's 8 PIQ prompts. Students have to select 4 of them. The answers must be 350 words or less. And a little bit different than the Common App, the UC applications are really looking for more direct answers, describing what you've done, what you've accomplished, the skills that you've developed, contributions you've made. They want something that's a little bit less of a creative essay than the Common App, and they're not looking for long narratives. Obviously, they give you less words, so they really want something a little bit more concise, and you want to make sure that you're conveying good content within those as well. So as junior year is wrapping up for students, now's a great time to sort of lay out a plan and a timeline about when you're going to complete all of these applications and the essays. So, I like to kind of look at deadlines and work my way backwards. Something we mentioned yesterday is that we try to meet every family and every student where they are in the admissions process. So I have some students who are rising seniors that I have been working with quite a while, and I have other students that I've just started working with. So really kind of determining, okay, where are you today and how do we get to the end? How do we get to these deadlines? I've included some deadlines here of when the Common App opens officially on August 1st. Maybe most colleges that have early action or early decision, we will see November 1st as a deadline. So I use that as the big deadline for submission. The UC application doesn't even open until November 1st and then has to be submitted by November 30th. So very different timeline there. And most of those regular decision deadlines are in January. So usually I will have a student use November 1st as our goal date to get things done. And then we think about what will we do from here. For me, in working with students, I always have the plan of June and July, we fill out the Common Application and get that done up to the writing section. You can't add any of the colleges in until after August 1st. But fill out the Common Application, get that done, and get the main Common App essay done. So that really accomplishes a big chunk of the writing prior to August 1st. As soon as the application opens on August 1st, we add the colleges in that a student is interested in, and then we see what kind of supplemental essays they have. And then we start drafting those. So my hope is that when students return to school in the fall of their senior year, they're just finishing up the process. They're not actually diving into the process because that can be very overwhelming in the fall. And it's senior year, they want to enjoy it. So I don't want them to feel like, oh my gosh, I have so much work to do on my college applications. So a lot of work can be accomplished this summer. I have a couple recommendations as we kind of wrap up, just to kind of keep in mind as you go forward. For students, start a journal. Keep notes about the activities you've done, the interests, the passions. I have the students I work with use a Google Doc because then it's just a place that we can kind of share and look at it together. Second, begin brainstorming before picking a prompt. Think about what you want to write about. That's what they want to know. And then research schools so that you can write specifically and honestly about each one. So if there's a college that you're really interested in and it's near the top of your list and they have that question of why us? Why do you want to apply to this college? Take the time to do the research. Even if you can't visit campus, go online, look at the admissions office, take a virtual tour, attend an admissions presentation online, watch recorded webinars, see what the college websites are amazing right now. So you can learn so much about that school. But if there's a school that you are interested in, take the time to find those specific things. For parents, obviously encourage your students to start thinking about writing their essay early. I say now, but I also right now give students the leeway of getting through final exams first. Some students are not in school anymore and some still are. So I don't typically ask them to start writing until they're actually done with school because it's almost like they want to finish one thing and put it away and then they can concentrate on the other one. I also have to recommend, I'm a parent, so I completely understand this, allowing your students drafts to remain their own, trying not to do too much editing, trying not to write it for them. I know when my two wrote it, I looked and I was like, and instead of telling them what to do, I asked questions. I would say, okay, I read this, and is this what you wanted to say? Is this what your the approach you wanted to take, or this is what I learned? Is there any more you want to share? Just to ask those questions so they can answer them and put the information in instead of me writing it for them. I hope this was helpful for all of you. I want to remind you to join us back here tomorrow for day 3. We have our test prep expert, Pete, who will be joining me to discuss what parents need to know about the SAT and the ACT in 2026 and 2027. We're going to hopefully provide some clarity on the different tests, what the differences are between them, timelines for taking them and prep. And also, I'm going to be talking about how testing fits into a college admission strategy, all those test optional decisions, how to navigate all of that. So Pete and I are going to be doing that presentation tomorrow, and I hope that you will join us. Before we get to the Q&A, which I see we have a bunch of questions in there, so I'll dive into that next. I know that navigating your child's path to college can feel overwhelming, especially when there's so much information and pressure coming at you all at once. So if you're feeling unsure about what the next step should be, you're definitely not alone. And we're here to help. So we support students as early as 8th grade with college counseling all the way through senior year. And as I mentioned, every family that I work with, I meet them where they are, and then we make a plan on how to get to the finish line. You can explore all of our programs at ectutoring.com. And if you would like to speak with about your child's specific situation, which every student is unique for sure, please feel free to scan the QR code on this slide to schedule a free consultation call with one of our educational specialists, Kathy, Jennifer, and Stuart. I have worked with all 3 of these specialists, and they are amazing. They're just great at getting to know the student and matching them up with just the right test prep coach or tutor, executive function coach, or college counselor that will help them navigate their process better. So with that, let's get started and go to the Q&A. So I think we had, looks like the Q&A box is empty, but we do have questions in the chat. So I'm going to go to that. You're welcome to use either box to put your questions in. So let's see. I'm going to start down here at the bottom. Okay. So Melissa did talk about the sessions are recorded and they will be sent to you. They will be recorded all week. So if you want to take them home and have a spouse or your child watch them, I think that would be amazing. Do the Common App prompts change significantly year to year? That's a great question. Honestly, no. They really don't change very much. So if a student wants to look at them early and start thinking about what they might want to write about, that's completely fine. I'm trying to remember the last time they changed. And even when they do change, they don't actually change all of them. It might be a one or two, just depending on what's going on in the world or different topics. And so, I think we may see some changes over the next couple of years because they've been pretty consistent. But as I mentioned, um, they also do come out in late February for the next application cycle, which I love because it gives us a tremendous amount of time to start working on them well before the Common App actually opens on August 1st. Okay, I have another question. Curious to what you typically cover with eighth graders. This is a great question. So with 8th through 10th graders, I typically will start with them by talking about what activities and things they're interested in and doing at school. So we do a lot of exploration about how to pursue different things they're interested in, how to get involved, how to community service. But one of the biggest things I do with 8th, 9th, and 10th graders is I have them take assessments. And we have 4 assessments that we use called AchieveWorks. And we utilize those for students. They take them, they're on productivity skills, personality, productivity, like a number of different things. And then we go over those assessments together and talk about what their strengths are, the things they're interested in. And my favorite thing about those is that they also suggest possible career paths. So it's a great opportunity for students to say, oh, okay, I actually, now I realize I'm interested in this and I didn't know I could pursue a career in that. Then that will help us with the course selection over the next couple of years to see what things they want to explore. And then in addition to that, talking about what different clubs and activities that a student might want to get involved in at school as well. I'll give you an example. I had a student that I started working with in 9th grade. He was very quiet student. And we're kind of getting to know each other. And one of the things he shared with me is he loves to garden. So one time he actually took me out to his garden on Zoom and showed it to me. And I loved that. And then when he took his assessments, we saw a lot of interest in like ecology, environmental science, all of these different things. And I said to him, "Oh, that doesn't surprise me because you like gardening, sustainability." And he had never really put those two things together. So then he joined the environmental club at school. He started a gardening club at school. And now he's looking to major in environmental science in college. So really kind of interesting way to kick things off. Okay, looks like I have another question. For the Common App personal statement, you mentioned working backwards, yes, before considering the prompts. So after you decide what you want to most convey, do you try to make it fit into a prompt or do you draft it and then revise it to fit to a prompt? That's a great question. So I don't look at the prompts at all until the end. I have students write their entire essay. Then we go back and look at the prompts and see if it fits into one of the prompts. The last prompt is write an essay on the topic of your choice. So if it doesn't fit into one of the first 6, we just pick the last one. And I'll tell you, as an admissions officer, I never once looked at the question. I didn't look to see what they were writing about. I just read the essay. So it really isn't about that. Those are really just there to give students some ideas about what they may want to write about. Hopefully that helps. All right, looks like I have another one in the chat. Should there be an overarching theme or narrative that connects the personal statement, supplemental essays, and PIQ responses? This is a great question. I've not had this question before. I don't think necessarily there does, because what I'll tell you is that these are all going to be asking different questions. So when you're thinking about the Common App personal statement, which is the biggest one, that one in particular is so broad and students write about so many different things. Then you switch to the supplemental essays and they're much more specific. Colleges want to know specific things. So to me, it's almost in the student's best interest to write about something different because you're taking advantage of sharing multiple sides of you, multiple interests, multiple passions, multiple things you've learned. To me, I almost would approach it with doing something different. I wouldn't want the same thing repeated. There are some colleges that, and not a lot, but they're pretty upfront with it. Virginia Tech is one of them that said, they say, we don't even look at the Common App personal statement. They won't even look at it. They have 4 questions they ask for their school. They only review those 4. I think there's only a handful of schools that are like that, but most schools that are pretty upfront about it. So then when you're looking and doing a Virginia Tech short answer, it is okay to repeat the topic because they won't be reading that main Common App essay. So I think, somewhere you want to have, I guess a theme or an overarching narrative thinking about that you are committed to something or, you have passion for this, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the same topic all the way through. It's absolutely fine to share different facets of the student because I think that's important as well. Okay, I think I've answered everything. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today, and I hope that you'll join us tomorrow for our testing SAT and ACT webinar. I'm excited for that one too, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks again.